December 16th, 1944, Lanzerath Ridge, Belgium. Before dawn, the forest was silent. Snow lay thick across the Ardennes, dulling sound and swallowing color. The ground was frozen hard, the trees bare and black against a low winter sky. A narrow ridge overlooked a road junction near the small Belgian village of Lanzerath. To most maps, it was an unimportant place. To the men waiting there, it was everything. Along that ridge, dug into shallow foxholes hacked from frozen earth, a small group of American soldiers waited for daylight. They belonged to the Intelligence and Reconnaissance Platoon of the 99th Infantry Division, United States Army. They were not a frontline rifle company. They were scouts, trained to observe, report, and withdraw. Their orders were simple: watch the road, report enemy movement, delay if possible. They were never meant to fight a battle here. The platoon was commanded by First Lieutenant Lyle Bouck Jr., 20 years old, a farm boy from Pennsylvania. He had never commanded men in combat before. His platoon numbered fewer than 20 effectives. Among them were privates barely out of training, armed with M1 Garand rifles, a single .30 caliber machine gun, a bar, grenades, and limited ammunition. They had no artillery support, no automatic, no air cover. Behind them lay miles of snow-covered roads leading west, roads that, if broken open, would allow German armor to flood into Belgium. At 5:30 a.m., the silence shattered. German artillery opened fire across the Ardennes in one of the largest barges of the war. Shells screamed overhead and detonated in the forests, villages, and American rear areas. The ground shook. Trees splintered. Telephone lines went dead almost instantly. The Battle of the Bulge had begun. The German plan was bold and desperate. Adolf Hitler had committed his last strategic reserves, including the 1st SS Panzer Division and elite Fallschirmjäger paratroopers, to punch through the thin American lines, seize Antwerp, and split the Allied armies in half. The sector held by the inexperienced 99th Infantry Division was expected to collapse quickly. At Lanzerath Ridge, Lieutenant Bouck's men waited. As daylight crept into the forest, German infantry began to appear. They moved cautiously at first, gray figures slipping between trees, advancing downhill from the east. These were Fallschirmjäger of the 3rd Parachute Division, combat-hardened veterans armed with MP-40 submachine guns, Mauser rifles, and supported by machine guns and mortars. There were not dozens. There were hundreds. Bouck watched through binoculars as enemy units assembled below the ridge. He counted squads, then platoons, then more. They were forming for an assault. Radio contact with battalion headquarters was sporadic. Artillery requests went unanswered. The American front was collapsing everywhere. Bouck made a decision that would define the next 20 hours. They would hold at approximately 9:30 a.m. The first German assault began. The enemy advanced directly toward the ridge, unaware that American positions were hidden along the tree line. The snow worked against them, crunching under boots. Bouck waited until they were close, within rifle range. Then he gave the order to fire. M1 Garands cracked sharply in the cold air. The .30 caliber machine gun opened up, cutting through the advancing line. German soldiers fell. Others dove for cover. The assault stalled almost immediately. The Germans had expected a weak outpost. Instead, they ran into disciplined, accurate fire from concealed positions. For hours, the pattern repeated. German infantry attacked in waves, probing the ridge, attempting to flank the American positions through the woods. Each time, Bouck shifted fire, repositioned men, and used the terrain to maximum effect. The ridge forced the attackers to move uphill through open snow, exposing them to rifle fire. By early afternoon, German casualties were mounting. Bodies lay scattered across the slope. The snow was torn apart by bullets and shell fragments. German officers shouted orders. Machine guns were brought forward. Mortars began dropping rounds into the American positions. Shrapnel ripped through trees. Foxholes collapsed. Men were wounded. Still, the Americans held. One by one, Bouck's men were hit. Private William Soderman continued firing until wounded multiple times. Sergeant William James directed fire while under machine gun attack. The platoon's machine gun overheated and had to be swapped with spare barrels under fire. By late afternoon, German commanders believed they were facing a much larger American force, possibly a full infantry company with artillery support. They were wrong. The American line consisted of fewer than 20 men, many already wounded, nearly out of ammunition, freezing, and cut off. As darkness fell, the temperature dropped further. Wounded men lay in foxholes, bleeding into the snow. Belgium attempted to withdraw under cover of night, but German units had already maneuvered behind the ridge. At around 9 p.m., after nearly a full day of fighting, the remaining Americans were surrounded. Out of ammunition, unable to move wounded comrades, and facing overwhelming numbers, Belgium made the hardest decision of his life. He ordered his men to surrender. They had delayed the German advance for nearly 20 critical hours. Those hours mattered. Because of the stand at Lanzerath Ridge, German units were delayed long enough for American forces farther west to organize defenses. Road junctions remained in Allied hands. Timetables slipped. The German offensive lost momentum where it could least afford to. The platoon was taken prisoner and marched east into captivity. They were not celebrated. For decades, their stand went largely unrecognized. Their reports have been lost. Their surrender misunderstood. The battle overshadowed by larger actions at Bastogne and Saint-Vith. It was not until 1981, nearly 40 years later, that a U.S. Army investigation confirmed the truth. Lieutenant Lyle Belge Jr. and his men had fought one of the most effective small-unit defensive actions in American military history. Belge was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. Every member of the platoon received decorations for valor. They had not been 12 men against 800 in legend. They were fewer than 20 against several hundred elite German troops, in freezing conditions, without support, holding a position they were never meant to defend. They did not break. They did not run. They held until holding was no longer possible. And in doing so, they helped blunt Hitler's last gamble in the West. In a frozen forest above Lanzerath, the snow eventually covered the scars of battle. But history did not.